813-433-0885. And you can email us at dj@wmnf.org if you'd like to join this conversation on that issue of torture. You were mentioning that because some of these prisoners were tortured, that makes trying them and convicting them all the more difficult. Besides being morally reprehensible, could torture actually be hurting putting away bad guys?
Well, it could. It could also be instrumental in creating new bad guys. We know that the revelations around Abu Ghraib radicalized large numbers of people in Iraq. And the knowledge that we engaged in torture probably radicalized lots of other people into a fight. There may be a lot of people of Muslim and Islamic faith out there who don't like us very much, but most of them aren't willing to do anything about it unless something occurs where they become radicalized and get in the hands of people who want to do us harm. So part of our job ought to be to prevent that in terms of dealing with terrorism. One of our major jobs ought to be to prevent people from tipping off that fence over onto the terrorist side, and I think torture helped us do that. Another
thing that might be tipping off the fence is the continuing drone strikes and the continuing wars that the U.S. is involved in Asia and Southwest Asia. I don't know if the ACLU of Florida has a position on drone strikes and on the continuing wars, but that's something that could be creating more terrorists, as you say.
Well, there are people in the ACLU who don't like the drone strikes. I think that drone strikes may be a necessary adjunct to our ability to deal with terrorism. I have, however, draw a line, and that is I really oppose the idea of using drones to target U.S. citizens overseas. I think that's a bad idea, simply because that's an execution order on a U.S. citizen issued by the executive arm of the government, and I don't think that's a good idea. Shouldn't do that.
And if you're not saying that as a hypothetical, that's actually happened.
Absolutely it has. Al-Awlaki, my background, by the way, I'm a retired intelligence officer. I follow this awfully carefully. And it seems to me that we need to be careful how we use them. The Obama administration came in and they got a little bit more careful than the Bush administration about how those drone strikes were actually used. That's a personal opinion. The ACLU takes no opinion on that, but I think the Obama administration has improved their use, but they've also had some major accidents and some major problems.
I think what you just said might come as a surprise to some people who are listening. I think that some of what I've heard is that a lot of people are more upset now that the use of drones has increased and is a little bit more, maybe, I don't know if the word is indiscriminate, but the targeting of people far from a battlefield maybe that has perhaps gone up during the Obama administration.
Absolutely, there's no question about it. In his first year, the Obama administration authorized more drone strikes than the total number of drone strikes during the Bush administration. That's absolutely clear. There's no question about that. But since I'm here as an ACLU guy, I also looked at this as a retired intelligence officer. Where I draw the line personally is the line ought to be we ought not to be targeting U.S. persons and U.S. citizens. That's what our courts are for. We need to get them. We need to find out how to get a hold of them and bring them back. And we've been actually fairly successful in doing that on a number of occasions.
Here's a text that we just got from a listener. If you'd like to send us a text, you can send it to 813-433-0885. You can also email us at dj@wmnf.org or call in at 813-239-9663. We're speaking with Michael Pheneger with the ACLU of Florida. He's the chair of the local chapter. So Mike, a texter wants to ask, how can you hold a POW after the war is over? So that's from Bob in Sarasota.
Well, that's a really good question. The problem is that there's no question about whether this war was over. It's clear that the Bush administration and the Obama administration both look at this idea that some of these people will be held in perpetuity until they can be tried or otherwise released. I give Obama some good marks in trying to release a lot of these people. Some of these people have been released to strange countries that I would have thought never would have agreed to take any of them. But the fact of the matter is it's disturbing that we have these people that we can't seem to dispose of carefully. And mostly it's because we shouldn't have picked up a number of them to begin with, and it's also because we mistreated them while they were in custody, and it's because we decided not to use the rule of law to bring them to courts and charges. Frankly, I'm not smart enough to figure out what you do about the mess right now.
Let's say there were no mess. Let's say that there's a serious issue of terrorism in the world, and there are potential terrorists out there plotting things. We've seen the incorrect way, perhaps, to go about it. Drag them to a black site, torture them, and get a false confession, and then we've got nothing.
Luckily, we stopped doing that.
Yeah. What would be the correct way to do that? If you find someone on the battlefield or you know where they are, what do you do that would make sense for civil liberties and for reducing terrorism?
Well, we had a good example not long ago where U.S. Special Operations Command Delta Force people went into Libya, picked up a terrorist suspect, brought them back to the United States where they're going to be tried. That's why we have our courts. We've done that very successfully over a long period of time. That's what we ought to do. We are a country that believes in the rule of law. We ought to act like it.
We have another email that I'd like to tell you. It comes from Roger in cyberspace. It says, to people that say, I have nothing to hide, so why should I care about surveillance in my community? I guess it wasn't phrased as a question, but I think that Roger is getting at, we were talking about surveillance. What difference does it make if I have nothing to hide?
Well, I will tell you that the fact of the matter is when things like the Range R, for example, or the Stingray, collect information. They can collect information on lots of people who are totally innocent. The Stingray will get information from all phones in the area where they happen to be. I was given a speech to a Tiger Bay club down in Sarasota one time, and a guy said, well, if you haven't done anything wrong, you don't have anything to fear. I looked and said, you got all these lawyers and judges in there. All you lawyers and judges who really believe that if you haven't done anything wrong, you don't have anything to fear, please raise your hand. And not a single hand was raised, because we know that when people become involved, even inadvertently, in the criminal justice system, bad things can begin to happen to them. That's why we have to have the rule of law. That's why we have to make sure that when we have these very sophisticated capabilities, that we don't misuse them. We haven't yet talked about the National Security Agency. My last job in the Army was commanding an intelligence school that was part of the NSA's actual system. And I was very disturbed to find out a lot of the things that the NSA is doing nowadays as a result of the Snowden revelations. I frankly was aware of a lot of them before Mr. Snowden did, because I pay attention. But the fact of the matter is that we depend on an oversight system for the National Security Agency that is truly broken. The FISA court, instead of basically approving individual orders, they approve techniques for accessing data. The FISA court's confronted all the time with technical requirements that they have no capability independently to really try to go ahead and understand. And that's dangerous. We just don't have it. The House and Senate Intelligence Committees, which are supposed to provide our oversight on these things, are also sometimes baffled by the technology. And sometimes the agencies just basically take them in, tell a certain select group of people what's going on, swear them to absolute secrecy, and then how do they actually perform their function? We need to look at the oversight that we have on sophisticated surveillance techniques from the federal level all the way down to the local level. And we need to get our hands get this stuff under control and make sure that we're not using it in ways that would be adverse to individual citizens in this country and violate their privacy.
The government argues that some of the things it needs to do have to be done in secret, and there's probably some legitimacy to some of that. And there was a loud, vocal objection by some people, by some senators, and others, for the torture report, the summary of the torture report, to be released by the U.S. Senate. Do you think it should have been released?
Absolutely. I've read it all. It doesn't give away any current secrets, but it really needed to be released because we needed to be able to tell the American people and let everybody know exactly what it was we did, and that way we'll hopefully never end up doing it again.
We have a text message that says, ask your guest about Chris Kyle, and it comes from Greg in Sarasota.
Chris Kyle is the American Sniper. And I haven't seen the movie and I haven't read the book. I do know that he is supposed to have been the most effective sniper around. His actions were done in combat, but I have no particular knowledge about whether everything he did was open and above board. I do know that you use snipers in the military operations. Sometimes they're very valuable for the protection of your force. It's also a capability that could possibly be misused, but I have no basis for judging. And as far as I know, the ACLU has never said anything about Chris. I think it is terrible the way he died. He basically was killed by somebody he was trying to help. I think that's tragic. I don't like to see anybody die needlessly.
We're going to go to the phone lines in just a second, but I want to give out the phone number once again. And we have about 11 minutes left in the show. 813-433-0885 is the text number. The phone number is 813-239-9663. So if you want to get in the queue now, you should call now before the end of the show. Also, you can email us at dj@wmnf.org. And we'll go now on the line to Zebulon. Hi, Zebulon.
Protesters in the street, and they were chanting a protest that said, we can't stop, we won't stop until killer cops are behind cell blocks or something like that. And what the news reporters did was they edited the chant, so it sounded like they were saying, instead of till killer cops are behind cell blocks, it made it sound like they were saying, so kill a cop. And then they put that out on the news, juxtaposed with some, images of the two cops that got shot. And there was a big dust-up afterwards because the protesters were not saying that. Now, my question is this. Most sound recordings and phone calls and everything are digital now. And as a musician that works in digital, I know how easy it is to edit and basically audio shop recording. My question to your guest is, to what extent do you think audio shopping phone conversations to make people sound like they're saying something they didn't say would occur as a way of locking up political dissidents in this country?
Well, news media have the wherewithal to act responsibly and irresponsibly, and if some of them have acted irresponsibly, that's terrible. I don't know of a case where the government has actually doctored digital information in order to convict somebody unnecessarily or illegally. So I can't say that, but the possibility is there. You can fake photos and you can fake other things. Can I make one other, just a little announcement? The local chapter of the ACLU, the Greater Tampa chapter, is actually going to have a program on the 10th of February on exactly these kinds of issues. We're going to contrast the government's ability to violate our privacy through surveillance and their corresponding efforts to protect their own privacy while they're doing it. And that will be held at the University Area Community Center, North Tampa, at 14013 North 22nd Street, and it's at 7 p.m. on February 10th. And if you would like information on that, we would love to invite ACLU members, supporters, and people who are interested in the surveillance issues to attend that. We'll have an interesting panel, members from Washington, from the local media, and others who have that kind of expertise, and we'll be talking a lot about these subjects. Again, 7 p.m. February 10th at the University Area Community Center, and if you need information, you can call me at 813-505-1847.
And that's a week from tomorrow. It sounds like Tuesday, right?
Yes.
813-239-9663 if you'd like to join this conversation. Eddie in Nokomis, you're on the air. Hello, you're on the air.
People read that book, The Gulag Archipelago by Alexander Solzhenitsyn. He was in Russia with the Stalin regime, and this is what it's like history repeating itself. It's like, yeah, the whole thing with all that is that if somebody decides they don't like you, or your neighbor, you took a girlfriend or something, then that's it. They'll toast you. So the same with the government agencies and all these intrusive tools, they could just say, well, yes, he's a bad guy, but.
Yeah, we haven't reached the gulag stage yet in the United States, but the capability to have a really invasive surveillance state is certainly there. If George Orwell were writing today and saw what we have now, he would have probably been even more pessimistic than he was then. The ACLU is not worried about the Republican Party and practical politics. What we're interested in is the rule of law and the Bill of Rights, and that's where we come down. If anybody's interested, I happen to be a registered Republican, have been since I registered to vote. I must confess at the same time I'm not too happy with them right now. But people from all political parties can worry about things like this. Rand Paul and the Libertarian branch of the Republican Party is very interested in this kind of stuff.
81.
And old people too. I happen to be one of them.
Thanks for your call, Eddie. I appreciate that. We're going to go in a second to Brian in Spring Hill, but before I do that, I want to give out the number 813-239-9663, or you can text us at 433-0885. Also, one of our texters or emailers wants to know the significance of Buckley v. Vallejo and Justice Powell.
Buckley v. Vallejo happens to be a Supreme Court case that has to do with campaign finance. Nice thing about all of that is that that's all overcome by, not nice thing actually, it's been overcome by events by Citizens United. And if we start a Citizens United discussion, you'll find that you'll find ACLU members on two sides of that issue, and it's extremely controversial. We could spend the rest of the week talking about Citizens United. My recommendation is, if anybody really has stamina, is to read it. It's about 1,100, 1,200 pages long, and unbelievable.
It's 12:57 in the afternoon. We have about 3 minutes left. My guest is Michael Pheneger from the ACLU of Florida. I'm Sean Kinane, your host of the WMNF News and Talk at noon on Mondays. And let's go now to Brian in Spring Hill. Hi, Brian.
Hello, Michael.
Hello.
I'm concerned, you indicated, Mr. Pheneger, that the Obama has gotten a little bit better over in the international scene about the drones and so forth. Yet here domestically in the NSA and the surveillance, hasn't he expanded the existing?
I will tell you, to the best of my knowledge, virtually everything that Obama is now using started in the Bush administration, and unfortunately, both of those administrations went along with changes in NSA's mission that I think are unfortunate, and they're safeguarding and justifying techniques that I think need to be very heavily looked at and enforced, and with extraordinary oversight, which does not exist today. No. The answer is no. We're the American Civil Liberties Union. We're concerned about the civil liberties of American citizens. A lot of our people have concerns about things like that. From my own point, I teach a course on geopolitics, and I think you've kind of badly overstated the complexities of what's going on in the Ukraine. But that's another story. Yes, it is.
Brian, thank